When we look at 2022, I think there's a couple things that we've had to learn after the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the precipitating energy crisis in Europe and the price challenges we've had around the world. The first new challenge that we're all going to have to deal with is a fracturing global order. We're learning that the conditions in markets and in politics that we've all come to expect can change really, really quickly. And as we look forward, because of the use of energy as a geopolitical tool, the division of the oil market through price caps, the rise of the consuming nations as market managers on their own right, we're going to have to navigate much murkier waters than we have before. And it's going to be a challenge to maintain everything we want out of the energy system: decarbonization, energy security, and increasing energy access in what is perhaps going to be a less globalized world. That doesn't mean we can't find solutions to those challenges, but it's going to require an active effort of governments, business, and civil society. I think that there is a dual effect. In some places, energy transition is definitely be driven by high prices. Europe over the last year has paid handsomely to secure gas supplies via LNG when it lost access to pipeline gas from Russia. That has driven new investment into renewables, and even in some cases makes new expensive technologies like hydrogen look really appealing. But that same price environment, when you look at a more globalized market, can be really punishing, whether it's the shortages we've seen in Pakistan and Bangladesh, or just now a sense of uncertainty around using gas as a replacement for coal as part of the energy transition in emerging markets is something we're going to have to manage over time. This is a dual-edged sword. In the United States in 2022, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which is the capstone on the climate agenda of the Biden administration. What we're seeing in the United States is a real focus on investment in clean energy technology. That helps reduce emissions by replacing the energy systems that we were using before. It's not a downward pressure regulatory environment, but it's an investment-based environment. That offers a couple things that government leaders are really excited about. On the one hand, it can possibly reduce energy prices by making them fall on the taxpayer as opposed to on the consumer. It's also meant to create a new level of investment and new constituencies for decarbonization. The level of investment that the United States is dedicating to low carbon technology is truly historic. The real question that we now face is it enough to reduce emissions in line with our targets? There, the best modeling shows that emissions will fall in the United States under the IRA against our benchmark by about 40% by 2030. President Biden's goal is 50%. So it gets us within spitting distance, but it doesn't get us all the way there, at least as we presently understand it. Permitting is a blanket term for a lot of different challenges, but it basically tells you how quickly can you build this new energy enterprise. How and who gets to decide where investments are made and what kind of investments are made. That is going to be a tension, not just in the developed world, I believe, in the next few years, but increasingly in the developing world as we look to finance an energy system that is better for access, better for emissions, and better for security. The real challenge is now, how do we act upon that imperative? How do we get enough projects for clean energy around the world that are going to meet consumer demands, allow for economic growth and security, that are financeable, that can be built quickly? How do we develop the supply chains necessary for energy transition? How, not just large enough, but resilient enough to survive in our sort of new tense geopolitical conditions? All these are problems that we have to manage over time. I don't think they are going to obliterate the idea of energy transition, but they mean energy transition actually has to be practiced. It can't just exist in a computer model. Hydrocarbons provide a vital energy service, and that is, well, I think it's clear that hydrocarbons provide a vital energy service that we're going to need for decades. The two questions that we face are, how do we make sure we have an adequate and cleanest possible supply of hydrocarbons? And how do we make sure that as we undergo energy transition, those communities that rely most heavily on the hydrocarbon economy have packages in place for economic diversification so that this overall transition is just. Whatever segment of society you're in, it feels like trust is eroding right now. One of the things that policymakers, industry need to be able to do is clearly articulate what their challenges are and what they need to help solve those challenges and resolve those challenges. It serves nobody to have a hidden agenda. We need to have an open dialogue about what people are trying to achieve and how they need to achieve it that is cognizant of the long-term goals that our whole world shares, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and providing for increases in human welfare. The dialogue that we had today was really excellent. I think you're never going to find true consensus on these issues, right? These are important political questions. They're important questions about economics, about technology development, where we have to actually let markets decide some of these things. Governments are going to decide some of these things. And the processes by which we adjudicate these decisions cannot just exist in one boardroom. What we had in this dialogue was honest contributions from a variety of parties reflecting different opinions on the pace, the risks associated with energy transition, as well as the necessity for investment in fossil infrastructure and how that can be done to the best effect. I thought that I learned a lot from that experience, and that's the most we can ask from these kinds of elements.